So how did you go from Toyah then to Saxon?
Well, we went over to with Toyah. We went over to Germany to do some TV work. So I'd been back, and the one of the managers of Saxon happened to have been the bass player in my first pro band, right?
Okay.
And he rang me up. I was at home with my parents, and he rang me up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, you know what I'm doing, because I mean, Toyah was big, you
Yeah.
know." He said, "Yes, but what are you doing now?" And I went, "Well, I'm just about to have Sunday lunch with my mother and father, actually." And he went, then he explained that Pete Gill had hurt himself and blah, 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 blah. And I said, "Look, sure, you know, because I was doing a lot of sessions at that period too. So he knew you had, you know, to be a session player, you had to learn stuff fast." So he said to me, "Yeah, Saxon are playing. This is Sunday." He said, "Yeah, Saxon are starting a tour on Wednesday, and Pete Gill can't do it. So would you do it?" And I said, "Use me as a last resort, but yeah, sure." But I knew what he did. He sat by his phone for half an hour and then rang me back, said, "You're on." And he said, "Can you come up to London?" I said, "Yeah, once I've had my dinner." So shot up to London. Then we went to north of London. I can't exactly remember where the place was, but Saxon were rehearsing in an old cinema. So I went up there, and they had a couple of guys they were auditioning. So I had a blast with them, and you know, it worked out pretty well. And they said, you know, "Will you do it?" And I went, "Yeah, sure." But I said I can only stay for a week or so, because Toyah and I were sort of planning this kind of thing, like what the hell were they called? Like Susie from Susie and the Banshees and Budgie did, just vocals, drums, and maybe a bit of synth, just something a bit different. We were like toying with the idea of that, and so they got the better guy out of the two people that were auditioning. They said, "Right, well, we'll have him sit behind you, so he'll have more time to learn the set. So when you leave, he can take over." So I went, "Okay." So first gig was in Brighton, at the Brighton Centre. So, and I'd bought tickets to go and see him.
You had the best seat in the house.
Yeah, it was actually. So a friend of mine that I was going with, I said, "Yeah, you better find someone else to go with, because I'm actually playing." He went, "What?" And yeah, so, and that's how it happened. So the first gig, that guy was behind me. After that first gig, he disappeared. He never turned up again. So I think the plan was to get me in, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
After that, you
Definitely
know.
sounds like it. Yeah. And was
So
it
that's how it went.
was that a difficult conversation to have with Toyah then, to say, "Look, I'm going with these guys now"?
No, I didn't. To be quite honest with you, I didn't actually speak to Toyah. I spoke to Nick Tauber, who was the producer and everything, and told him, you know, maybe in retrospect, yeah, I should have, you know, I should have spoken to Toyah and the rest of the guys as well, you know, out of sort of politeness. But it was all a bit of a mad panic trying to learn all these damn songs and everything. And because what eventually happened was we played Stafford Bingley Hall, I think it was, with bands. I think Budgie were on it and stuff. And we were in this sort of this country hotel somewhere. I just remember being in bed, and suddenly my door got kicked in, and they were all sitting at the end of my bed. You know,
Oh, nice.
I was fast asleep. And they asked me to join, and I said, "F off, I'll tell you in the morning." And then the next gig was Bristol, and I said, "Yeah, okay." That was it.
Oh, so it wasn't a difficult decision. I mean, they come between a man and his food and a man and his sleep. That's not a good sign to start with, is it?
No, it was great. I mean, we all got on great straight away, you know, instant.
And then we move on to the first album, 1983, The Power and Glory. I mean, I found a really interesting quote as well from Martin Popoff, who's a respected music journalist, of course. And he said, the contribution of the new ass-kicking drummer Nigel Glockler working a metal magic. So for that first record that you kind of played on, what do you think you brought to the group in the writing and the recording and the sound?
It was the first
Yes,
studio
that's
album.
right. Sorry, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've said this before. It was I sort of felt I had something to prove, because obviously Pete Gill had a lot of fans, you know. So I thought, well, this is important that I prove myself. So, I mean, we were rehearsing and writing between every tour in '82. As soon as we got a week off, it was like straight in somewhere, writing, rehearsing. and everything. And no, I'm sort of quite pleased that Martin thinks that, actually. You know, I'm quite sort of, yeah. But no, I mean, the whole vibe of the thing was great. I was really enjoying it because it was a whole group thing. We had a great, you know, Jeff Glicksman was great to work with. It was my first time in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, recording wise, that is recording. We toured America, but it was my first time recording there. So that was like a new thing. And funnily enough, Steve Walsh, who was the singer with Kansas, you know, Jeff Glicksman had worked with Kansas, which is where we knew him from, sort of thing. And Steve Walsh came to the studio, and he was a big, you know, I was like a big fan of Kansas and his solo stuff, because I thought, what a singer this guy. So that was the icing on the cake for me, you know. And it's cool.
And did you feel any pressure? Because you mentioned Pete Gill there and having a lot of fans. Yeah. Did you feel any pressure going into the studio, knowing this would be the first new music that Saxon fans would hear?
Yeah,
from?
Sure. And I mean, I'm sure they felt it too, because it was like, you know, new drummer. It's like, what are the press going to say? And you know, so yeah, I think you know, we all had pressure on us, so to speak. But you know, I think that sort of kind of got overridden by the fact that the vibe in the studio was just great. The whole atmosphere was brilliant. And we actually found, because we're all curry nuts, right? We just love Indian food. And we actually found an Indian restaurant in Atlanta. That's where we were. And run by a couple of guys from Birmingham. So we went in there and they said, oh, great, now we can cook it, because the Americans don't like it as hot as we do. And we were eating this stuff, and other people in there were like going, oh, my God, you know. Because we were like, come on, hotter.
Home from home. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was. No, it's great.